Dumela, Sawubona, Sakpase, Namaste, Abshin, Dubra Ota, Assalamu alaikum, Hotep. Buenas noches, bonsoir. Good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Doral Anez Larrier of Larry's Educational Resource Network, where I plant seeds to help you grow. Tonight, welcome to the Doria Larrier Show, where I host inspirational leaders who interact, who instruct, who influence, who impact their community to live their life just a little better than they did the day before. And tonight we have a very interesting conversation. Some may seem a little controversial. It crosses race, it crosses religion, and it focuses on a savior. Some people will put the two together. Some people decide, this don't cross. Don't do that. Well, I would love for you to welcome to my show tonight, and thank you so much for those people who are already watching. And please share this out. I really hope that you do the two things, and that's one, that you bring your mug, and if you need to bring a journal or a pen and paper, bring it. If you want to bring an extra device in order to sort of look some of the stuff that we're talking about, please do that too. But please make sure that you welcome my friend Patrick Dankwa. But please make sure that you welcome my. I think you have to turn your sound down. Patrick Dankwa. But please make sure that you welcome my. I think you have to turn your sound down. Patrick Dankwa. But please make sure that you welcome.
Hold on, I might be having some sound issues or tech issues. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
I can, but now we have some feedback.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
I can, but now we have some feedback.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
People, sometimes this happens. We were just in pre-check. It didn't happen.
So, question: should I log out and log back in?
We were just in pre-check. Right. It didn't happen.
Okay, I'm going to log out and log back in. Should I log out and log back in?
Okay. Okay, folks. Well, so why don't we do this? Hey, thank you so much to the people who are watching. So let me, I guess, while Patrick is getting his sound together, this is sometimes what happens. We're in pre-check. Those of you who know have been on the show with me, I go through at least a 20-minute to half an hour pre-check, and things like this happen. So we're gonna make sure that he comes back on and comes back in and comes back in well. While that's happening, I'm gonna give you just a little bit of a teaser. So. And this is going back. Let me make this quick. Patrick and I went to high school together. Those of you who know, I reign from Brooklyn. I am Brooklyn proud, Brooklyn strong, all day long. And I went to high school, very well known, second oldest high school in the country. Hold on, let me see if he's back. Hey.
Hey, okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. No feedback.
I can hear you okay. There's no feedback. All right.
Yes. Excellent. Here we go. Great. So I was just starting with the fact that I said Patrick and I said, I'm Brooklyn strong all day long. And Patrick and I went to high school together. Went to Erasmus Hall High School, the second oldest high school in the country. The first is Boston Latin in Boston, Massachusetts. The second is Erasmus Hall High School, 1787.
It's up there.
1787.
Back then, yeah.
Yes. And so we were in high school together, and we were in a class called the 99 official, the Erasmus for Excellence. They sort of took a couple of us, and lovingly we'll say knuckleheads, but we were far from being knuckleheads. But a couple of us, and sort of kept us together the entire 4 years together. And we just, what would be considered like your Regents track classes. And I say that because I pulled out our yearbook and I pulled up a picture of Patrick, and I am going to show it during the session. So one thing that I'm going to pull out now. So one thing that Patrick, you're part of high school clubs and groups and what have you. And one thing that Patrick was a part of is connected to his career. And so just a little pinch of things that you're interested in while you're younger, they can and they do follow you in your track. So I'm going to show you, this was Patrick back then. He was part of the debate team. And do you see the scales of justice? And so this connects to who Patrick is in his day job. And then we'll talk about what his night work is and his passion. So Patrick is an attorney. He's an attorney, and he operates, you practice, I think you practice in Chicago. Yes, I don't know what took you to Chicago, because you really should have stayed in Brooklyn, but I'm just saying. So he's a practicing attorney, and he's done a lot of great work in the legal field, again, following through. And this, very few people know, only if you knew me in high school, I was actually a part of a club called FBLA. And those of you who know, business clubs, it's actually called Future Business Leaders of America. Who would have thunk that actually would have stayed the course? And 30 years or so later, I come right back to that work and doing this. And so let's get into this conversation. So Patrick, first tell us just a little bit about what you do, if you're able, in your legal work, and then we'll hop into this conversation about the Black Messiah.
Yeah, so it's been about, I guess about 24 years now I've been practicing. Went to law school out here. I had joined the military, and then I moved out here. And I do mostly family law work. So that means divorce, baby mama drama, child custody visitation. So, hey, come on, I'm keeping it real. That's what it is. It's baby mama drama. So I do a lot of that. I also am court appointed by judges to represent children whenever their parents are in custody and visitation disputes. I do a lot of that work. So, so most of it is managing people in very high stress situations and trying to look out for the kids. So that's what I do routinely to make a living. But throughout the years, I've been involved in any number of, volunteer organizations that deal with, you can say, community activism. I was involved in NAACP out here, Operation Push, which is Jesse.
Yes.
I've volunteered out here for that. Active in various bar associations, the Black Bar. I was active in that. And a couple of years ago, I became president of the Jewish Bar Association, and I was the first non-Jew to do that. So, and that was about 2 years ago.
Right. So that's what made me say, wait a minute.
So that's over. So I figured I'd end with that, because that's probably segues into what you may want to ask me about the book and how I ended up writing it.
Right. So now we're going to step back just one moment to sort of frame the levity of this conversation. So in high school, Patrick, we all had like these titles, like sort of popularity, and Patrick was known. I'm not going to say it. You have to say it. What were you known as?
I mean, I was a clown. I was a clown. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Me and Pablo, now deceased,
right?
Friend Pablo. But the two of us, we were like Abbott and Costello or something.
Oh my gosh, it was real. So there's a difference between the class clown and then like the school clown. But Patrick and Pablo, shout out to his memory, were so fanatical about things that even some of our teachers were like, maybe you guys should like get a bit. Like maybe you guys should like, just go on the road, because they always had these very weird, like interesting jokes. But again, this is part of the levity. So if you kind of see me like, kick back and sort of throw jousts at him, it's because that's just how I know and have grown up to love Patrick. So as we were catching up a couple of weeks ago, he said, oh, I wrote a book. And I was like, really? And I was like, what is it about? And he said, Jesus being the Black Messiah. And I'm like, okay. But then he said that, which is what he just mentioned, that he was the first non-Jewish person to be the president of a Jewish bar association.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, oh, no. Nah. We got to talk about this. So why don't we start there and then you get into the book?
So what happened about, I don't know, maybe is it 10 years now? Probably not quite. There are many bar associations. There's the Puerto Rican bar, the Hispanic bar, the Black bar, and so forth. And there's a Jewish bar. I started going to the Jewish bar really just because they had great seminars. That really nothing more drew my attention. And I started getting active and involved in it. And the funniest thing happened is I would go to these Jewish bar functions, and when I would get to certain meetings, I'd be the only Black person. And so people would then, now for me, the fact that Jesus was Jewish is really, that's not a newsflash, okay? I mean, that's pretty obvious, all right? So, but as I would learn, that comes as a shock to many Christians. So I'm like, okay, so Jesus, so whatever. So I'm there, and I would get this would be the question that they would always ask, because everyone wants to be politically correct, right? So I'm the only Black guy at a Jewish function, and people would come around and they would be like this. Hello, how are you?
We're going to be very respectful.
And I would, shake my hand, and they would say, and I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, now, what the hell are you? But they would never say that. So they just say, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? Just waits for me to say something. So, how did you find out about tonight's event? They would ask me. And I would say, well, I got the email that went out to all the members. Isn't that how you found out about tonight's event? Oh, you got the email. Email. You're a member. I'm like, yes, I'm a member. Okay. Wow. Okay, great. So you're Jewish then? Okay. I said, no, I'm not Jewish. And then right then it would just be like, stop. And
like, what are you doing here? You're an infiltrator.
No one can say that, right? No one can say, what are you doing here? Because membership is open to all, regardless of religion. So,
well, so that's really important to know, because realistically, if I heard Jewish organization or whatever, I'm not going because I would think that, of course, all eyes would be on me, and they'd be like, so, this is just like what's happening. And I don't think I would probably feel comfortable to do that. Now, if anybody is watching, if y'all feel like you would walk up into a situation like that, please drop it in the comments, and I'm going to tell you, y'all lying. You're lying. But Patrick is bold enough to do that. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Yeah. And there's another side point I'll make to that, and that is part of all the various forms of discrimination and oppression and bigotry that we have against whatever group. One of the things that we have to start doing is we have to start cross-pollinating within our tribes. So you need to have people of different ethnic groups joining and supporting and becoming allies. And there's really little better way to do that than to leave your tribe for a little bit and go and help another tribe. Okay?
So I actually support that idea to an extent. So because realistically, about the book, The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
In the movie, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a book first, and it was a movie.
I'm not going to read stuff.
Huh? What?
I'm not going to read stuff. I'm going to go straight to the movie.
Oh my God. Okay. So, right, to an extent, I believe, yes, there should be some of us, I'm going to say us, in many spaces. We have to also, though, prepare us who we're going to send to be prepared for those moments, like what was done in the civil rights movement. The group who had to participate in the sit-ins and in the protests and whatever, they had to be trained. They had to be like, look, this is not going to be comfortable, but let's do some mind work. Let's do some body work. Let's get you prepared and grilled up, because it's going to be difficult, and you need to maintain your peace. So I'm really glad that you took that step. Now I got to ask you these questions. When you went to your first meeting, what was in your head? Or did someone say, hey, come to the meeting? That's what I don't know. How did you get an invitation to the Jewish bar?
So, like I said, I started going to the meetings, and maybe this will give you a little bit of a difference. So with attorneys, and this may not be the case with other professions,
okay,
but when you have a number of bar associations that have a number of events, at these events, there will be a lot of ethnicities. I mean, when the Hispanic bar has an event, it's not just Hispanic showing up.
Okay.
When the black bar has, I mean, it's everybody. People just come, you pay your $50, your $75, you drink, you have your hors d'oeuvres, you hobnob, you network, and all these things. What was different so there were people at certain events and receptions that were a myriad of colors. What was different is when I said, I actually want to become an official member. And so now when I decided to become an official member, that's when I would be the only black person in the room. But if I went to other, kind of general events,
Okay.
like a bar party or something, that would be all kinds of very diverse. So when I said, okay, I'm going to be a member, and I'll tell you quickly how I, kind of decided to go ahead and become a member and become really interested, because I was interested really in the anti-Semitism. I mean, that is the one thing, like when I did join, they say, okay, well, there's, any volunteer organization, there's always a lot of free work they want you to do, right?
Committees and such.
Yeah, exactly. And bar associations are no different. And when I joined, I said, okay, what I'm really interested in was the legal seminars that drew me. But then the other thing was anti-Semitism.
Okay.
Because I felt that I was becoming more and more, as I started learning more and more about the history of Judaism, not just Judaism per se, but the history of Judaism, the history of persecution and so on, way beyond the Holocaust, because everybody's heard of the Holocaust. But there's a lot more than that. So I said, okay, you know what? I think I'm going to join. I'll start doing some work in anti-Semitism. And that's when I'd be the only black person in the room. And that's when I would get these questions about, and so how it would end when they would say, well, oh, are you Jewish? I'd say, no, I'm not Jewish, I'm Christian. That's when they were really frazzled as to what they should ask me next, because, they want to say, why are you here? But no one ever said that. Instead, what they did was they said, oh, you're not, okay, you're not Jewish, you're Christian. They would say, okay, so welcome. Everyone's welcome. But just out of curiosity, since you are Christian and not Jewish, if you don't mind me asking, what made you want to join?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, I figure since Jesus was Jewish, I'm in good company here.
Oh, okay. There we go.
And then I never got any more questions about that. I mean, now, but I would get it a lot. So, until somebody heard it, and then I guess word probably went around. But they were, but you know what? Believe me, after a year or two of volunteering, I got an invitation to join their board.
Wow.
And then upon that, they asked me, do I want to chair the committee that did the legal seminars, which is what drew me to the organization in the first place.
Wow.
And so I did that. And of course, I was on the anti-Semitism committee because that's what I really, really wanted. And when I'd be in an anti-Semitism committee meeting, you have to remember, so here are all these Jewish guys, mostly guys, sitting around talking about various issues of anti-Semitism that are going on and what should be the response.
Okay.
I remember they were talking about something one day and about what statement or what the Bar Association, what should be the public response and so on. And, I'm not saying much because I'm like, hey, I'm new here, so I'm just here to learn. And so as we're going around the room for getting people's opinions, I'm not, most of the time saying much. So I had something to say about it. And I'll never forget that one of the members was going to leave because he said, look, you better hurry up because we take too long in these meetings. We got to hurry up and leave because I got a train to catch. I got to get out of here. And then we brought the topic up and I said, yeah, I have something to say. And then somebody said to the guy who was in a hurry, they said, hey, you're going to miss your train. You said you got to leave. He said, oh, bump that. I want to hear what this dude has to say because I was the only non-Jew in the room.
Okay.
I was there thinking about how they should respond to anti-Semitism. Really, the question is, they don't know how they're going to be perceived by people who aren't Jewish. And since I was the only person in the room who wasn't Jewish, the only person who can give them a perspective that none of them really could think about. And so they said, well, you know what? What do you think about such and such issue?
Okay.
whatever the issue was, I said, okay, this is my perspective, and these are the kind of questions I have, and so on. And they appreciated that because it was a perspective that no one else in that room had or could have had.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. And so that's a way that, when we become allies for each other, that's how we can add value. Because I give them a different perspective. So the bottom line is I did that, and then a year later I was asked to be treasurer. Okay, wow. I took that. Then a year or two later, I was asked, hey, would you, if offered, would you accept? And I said, I was very surprised. I was very surprised. At that time, I think I was active in the organization, maybe 5 years. I was very surprised. And I said, I was very surprised. I was wild. I was like, okay. Okay, yeah. And then that was it. And then, you put it to, these things are voted on. So,
right.
I don't get appointed. So it was put to a vote. But, over those, 4 or 5 years, I had done enough work. I was aggressive. I also began, there's an online only newspaper called Times of Israel, printed out of Jerusalem.
Okay.
I've written a few articles, and my articles all deal with bigotry. And I will say that they're all very forceful. I do not hold any punches at all. So all my articles have to do with either anti-Semitism or racism. For example, there was an article, the first article I wrote was about Black Lives Matter, when one aspect of Black Lives Matter was comparing Israel to South Africa and saying that Israel was a apartheid state. That's all that stuff in it, that's very controversial. Doesn't make a difference what side you take. Half the people will be angry with you and half the people will love you. It's very, very controversial.
Hold on a second. Let me pause with you for a moment. If anybody is watching this who engages in this conversation about Palestine and Israel, about anti-Semitism and the role, and I'm going to say the perspective of Black people in that conversation. And I'm saying that publicly because I know that there are some people who, religious leaders that I'm connected with who have elevated that conversation about the role of Palestine and Israel in the past couple of years. And like in a convention that I'm a part of, there was a text, it was like, everybody should read this. And, and I was like, why? So I'm really, really interested in this, but please, people, if you're watching, can you share it or like tag the name of other ministers, other religious leaders that you know in a variety of faiths, in order to just hear this perspective? Because listen, if my classmate right here was the president of the Jewish bar, like that's impressive. That is super impressive. And so I'm really, really interested in hearing, not just hearing more, but also having other people who participate in this conversation within our own groups. Like you said, like be allies in other people's groups, cross-pollinate. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. So go ahead. I'm gonna tag some people while we're talking. Go ahead.
So I, without getting into the detail, bottom line is that, I support Israel. And I support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Now, whether or not people agree with everything Israel does in regards to that, there was another question. So my first article was writing, basically criticizing certain aspects of Black Lives Matter for their position and reminding them of the role that the Jewish community played in the civil rights movement, and still continues to play, actually, in standing up against bigotry against all minority groups. So that was the first article that I wrote. And then different things would happen, and I would write about also about racism in particular, George Floyd, any number of things. And so I was, and then I became, then I was invited to join, I guess, the advisory council for an organization called the Simon Wiesenthal Center, headquartered in LA. And they do anti-racism training in a variety of ways. They have something called the Tolerance Museum. It's wonderful if you ever get a chance to go out. So, and then they flew me out to Atlanta, where I did some some speeches out there, and again, where I was very direct and very forceful, and I guess with me, what you see is what you get. I don't have facades. So maybe you don't like what I say, but I'm going to tell you the same thing on Monday and again on Tuesday and again on Wednesday. So when I went, one of the more interesting things I said that I think kind of surprised some people, but hey, I was the only Black person in the auditorium. I was one of a panel of speakers talking about anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they were talking about is that just like our young generation doesn't appreciate the civil rights movement, the young Jewish generation doesn't appreciate the Holocaust and the suffering and so on.
Mm.
So many younger Jews think that, Jews didn't show up in Israel until after World War II, until after the Holocaust, when in fact they'd been there for 3,000 or 4,000 years. So because of that, there are a lot of young Jews who don't really see the state of Israel as being important or worthy of support. So as I was at this forum and people were talking about this, now I'm the only Black guy in the auditorium. I'm on the panel, and the panelists are talking and sharing, and the mic is getting passed. When the mic gets passed to me, I say, I think I know how you can solve this problem with your young people not realizing that Jews have been there for 3,000 and 4,000 years. I said, I think this is the problem. Somehow, I think you all probably unwittingly have communicated to your young people that the original Jews were white. We all know the original Jews were not from Germany or Poland or Russia.
You dropped the bomb. You dropped the bomb. Did the room go silent? Did the room go silent?
Silent. So I said, I'm sorry, but the Middle East is only two continents, Asia and Africa. So Moses was from no part of Europe. I said, Abraham, I said, you're talking Black and brown people. So I said, look, the original Jews look more like me than any of you. I said, and you all need to start teaching this. And then your young people wouldn't be so shocked at the idea that Jews were there for 3,000 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Keep it coming.
People were they were shocked. So, they were shocked. So anyway, so as I found out more about Judaism, and in particular about the persecution of Jews beyond the Holocaust, I started to understand some things as a Christian, as I think about the Gospels, as I think about the Bible. And what was surprising to me was, so I know Jesus was Jewish. What I didn't realize was all the implications of that. And the implications of that are this. So for any Christian listening, here's where it gets difficult. Though you will agree with me intellectually, it gets uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So the Bible did not drop out of the sky in a cellophane wrapping the way it is. It's a collection of writings over a period of hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
So that means when Jesus, and let's just assume the Gospels and take them at face value, we're not challenging them. So when Jesus came and was teaching and preaching, there was no New Testament. There were no letters from Paul. All there was is what we call the Old Testament.
Right.
Right, which is the Torah, which is the Jewish scriptures.
5 books.
Well, plus the other, what they call the prophets.
Okay.
I mean, Isaiah and all that.
Isaiah.
So,
Jeremiah, Ezekiel.
So here's Jesus, a Jewish man, talking to a Jewish audience. Because that's the other thing, right? Because Jesus told his disciples, don't even go talk to those people. Only talk to other Jews. He only said go out after he was resurrected and came back, when he gave the Great Commission. Prior to that, he said, don't even talk to those people. So when you read the Gospels, you are reading the words of a Jewish man to a Jewish audience. So the first thing that comes obvious is, how do we interpret the Gospels without first understanding Judaism as it existed 2,000 years ago? You see, so what we typically do is we interpret the Gospels based on the doctrines and dogmas that we already believe, much of which come from the Apostle Paul, right? But none of those so I said to myself, okay, suppose we go back in time and there is no New Testament. All you have is the Old Testament. And whatever the cultural history is and the teachings of the rabbis who were at the time, and put Jesus in that scenario and ask ourselves, now, what did this probably look like? For real. And you start asking a bunch of questions that, you otherwise wouldn't ask. So questions like, what's going on with Jesus and Joseph? Other than the very beginning of the story, you don't see Joseph doing anything. Jesus is being crucified. His mother's there. You see his siblings are coming looking for him. They think he's crazy. You don't see Joseph. So one of the things that's very common in Judaism, which is the religion of Jesus, is that you create a backstory where there are gaps or inconsistencies in scripture. You create a backstory that you just have to be careful not to contradict the text. So for example, I create a backstory and I say, you know what the issue was? Joseph and Jesus really didn't get along. Joseph obeyed and raised Jesus, but he really wasn't feeling Jesus. And then Jesus, remember, was 30 years old when he started his ministry. Well, no one ever thinks, and this is one of the things that mainstream Christianity, we're not encouraged to think. But 2,000 years ago, who's still single at 30? See, you don't think about that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. People get married in their teenage years. There's no reason to be single. You ain't dating nobody. No, you're not.
Okay.
Right?
You're right.
I mean, your parents get somebody else's parents. And then, and so here you got a guy who's pretty much presumably living with his mom and dad, and he's 30 years old. Now, how is that going to play out? I mean, let's be honest. So I write, hey, you know what? Probably, dad was like, when is this dude gonna, get married, settle down, have a play, and mom is like, we're waiting.
Right, but Jesus also disappeared for a while. So he was a teenager. He goes to study and he comes back at 30.
No, what do you mean he disappeared? He disappeared for 1 day at the age of 12 in the Gospels.
Okay. 1
day. They take him on a caravan, right, to Jerusalem. They turn him. By the way, it's 65 miles. It's a 65-mile walk. So they leave. They think he's in the caravan. They walk for a day, which might be 15 miles. And then they realize he's not there. They're scared out of their mind. They turn around. They go back for him, and they find him in the temples, right at the feet of the rabbis. They don't leave him there. They say, come along. And he says, okay. Now, by the way, that's another story I have in there. Now, let's be real. You got to walk back 15 miles thinking that something happened to your kid. You find him and he's just chilling.
He's chilling.
Like nothing's wrong. Are you going to say, oh, son, please come hither? No.
You snatch him up like we do.
Yes.
Where were you? What were you doing?
So that's one of the things that I do is you try to humanize it and make it realistic. So one of the things I have is that Joseph pretty much balls him out, and it's like, hey, what are you trying to do? Give me and your mother a heart attack? You better get on over here. And they take him. So I try to put something realistic that people can really relate to. Listen, there was Lazarus who Jesus loved. Well, why do you love him so much? There's nothing that tells us why these two are so close. But here's what I find more interesting. He loves him so much, but yet why is Lazarus not one of the 12 disciples? That to me is the most interesting question. Now, here's what I'm saying, Doriel. We don't even ask it. We have been so programmed we do not study the Bible. We skim the Bible. Because to study means to consider thoughtfully and reflectively. That's what study means. So how does somebody tell you a story and obvious questions that if they were telling you any other story in the world, you'd say, well, wait a minute. Okay, hold up, because there's something's missing. What's going on? So here's the Son of God. He's got somebody who he's close to, a very good friend of his. They don't tell you how they became friends, but more importantly, why is he not one of the 12 disciples? That's the question. And we don't even think to ask. So
Okay.
I create a story. And the story is they're close because when Jesus was little, he got picked on, like all other little kids got picked on. But Jesus wasn't going to fight back. And so this guy was a neighbor who lived next door, who was older than Jesus, and who, was like, hey, don't be picking on this little guy, and stood up for him when other bigger kids were trying to pick on him. So that was my backstory as to why they became such good friends.
Okay.
Why Jesus loved him. And as to why he didn't become a disciple, well, the story I chose was he wanted to become a disciple. But his wife, Shaniqua, said, hell to the no.
Why do you call her
Listen.
Shaniqua? Why you don't call her Shaniqua in the book?
Yes, I do.
Oh, geez. Okay. All right.
Listen, and so the point is, hey, look, I mean, you've got to have a story. You got to be realistic. I mean, these are human beings. Sometimes we just sanitize things to the point that everything is like, oh, listen. I mean, look, if you're married to somebody and he comes in, hey, remember my best friend, the guy that I used to, beat off the bullies? Well, I think he's the Messiah. And you'd be like, okay, well, good for him. And you'd be like, well, you know what? Well, he and a couple of friends, we're going to quit our jobs and wander around and, just wait until, now
it
come on.
happens.
You know that you're not just going to go, okay. So the backstory is this was creating a lot of marital friction,
Okay.
and Jesus was like, look, I know you're my boy. Okay. But you know what?
Okay. You actually, okay, wait. So you kind of have a point there. You have a point with this. I'm going to be very specific. So when it comes to, how the disciples are, they have families, but yes, they sort of like, they throw down their nets. Can't even get the word out. They throw down their nets and they go follow him. And I have thought about it like, well, if they had families, if they had communities, who's taking care of the house? Who's now feeding the kids? Who's now protecting the family? If they're going, if anybody wants to comment, drop a question, please do so. We'll pull it up on the chat. But yeah, I've kind of had that question as well. Go ahead. All right, I'm listening.
So we don't talk about that. So that's for example, it's another thing that I talk about. Now in terms of the Jewish aspect, one of the things I do, because I think the mainstream church is so incredibly anti-Semitic. For example, the Last Supper. Okay, we've all heard of the Last Supper. We've seen pictures of it, right? Jesus did not refer to it as a supper or a dinner. He called it a Passover. That's what he called it.
Okay.
And that's what the disciples called it. So that is uniquely Jewish. So if that's coming out of his mouth, that's what he called it. In our Gospels, that's what he calls it. And the disciples like, hey, it's Passover. Where do you want to go eat? Where do you want us to set up? And he says, oh, go to so-and-so person. So why don't we call it the last Passover? Why would we call it the last dinner? Like it's any other dinner, except it's the last one.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw that back. Could it be that okay, well, just like you're trying to humanize his life and times, and let me just ask for clarification. Are you humanizing the life and times of Jesus through a Black lens? Because it almost sounds like that's what is coming across, that you're maybe giving a stereotypical caricature of the Black family in his life.
The main audience intended was a Black Christian audience. Okay.
Okay.
And so
to explain the Jewish side of him.
So to explain yes.
Through Black families' eyes.
Yes, but here's the thing. If I got deep, I'm not trying to be Professor Smalls.
Okay.
If I got deep, then people, let me say something to you. I'm sure Professor Smalls has had the same things. When you start talking to people about their religion, and people will throw you off a bridge, people get very upset. And so I was very careful not to challenge any mainstream Christian dogma. I was very careful not to This is not assuming anything that's in the Gospels is inaccurate. So I assume all these things. I assume for purposes that Jesus was black, by the way. And so what I do with the screenplay is I say, and I do something kind of odd, where even though these things really happen in the Bible, where I think that people are going to be shocked, I literally will put the Bible quote in there, because I say, people are going to read this and be like, this guy he's not telling the truth. Like, for example, Pilate, he brought Jesus to Pilate. I mean, Jesus's life would have been spared if Pilate had listened to his wife. But we don't talk about that. I mean, while he was there, a guard comes and says, hey, a message from your wife. What is it? I'm kind of busy. Well, she said she had a dream, and this guy, Jesus, is a real deal. We don't talk about that.
Right. Well, no, some people actually do mention it, because I've actually heard that. I've heard that in some sermons. So I have, let me shout out. I've heard that in some sermons. Like, listen to the woman. No, I'm not listening to the woman. She don't got nothing to say. It doesn't matter right now. Okay.
So I try to humanize it. The other thing is that the aspect of the anti-Semitism. So one of the things, if I ask a person, and I've asked this of pastors and preachers and deacons, and I've said to them, and they say, oh yeah, Jesus was Jewish. Okay, yeah, we know that. I said, well, let's take a look at the implications of this. I said, let me ask you something. Why is it that you think that Jews do not accept that Jesus is the Messiah, since he's one of them? And it's really amazing that I get blank stares. They cannot tell me what Jews feel. I mean, they know that Jews don't accept Jesus as the Messiah, right? That's basic. They know that. But if I say, okay, what is the typical Jewish response if you ask the rabbi? Well, hey, okay, why don't you believe he's the Messiah? What's the big deal? And they couldn't tell you. So one of the things I did is I said, one of the things that we don't talk about typically in mainstream churches is, what would Jesus look like to most of the Jews, to his audience? So here's a guy who did all these miracles. And one of the things that strikes me is, how can someone do all these miracles and yet have, large percentage of the population, even that witnessed the miracles, doubt that he's the Messiah, right? How does he do? I mean, he raises the dead. I mean, come on. He walks on water. What else does the guy have to do? I mean, at one point in the Gospels, Jesus even said, if you don't want to believe what I'm telling you, my goodness, look at what I've done. Come on, give me a break. And one of the reasons that I think we don't understand is because we don't look at it in the context of that there was no New Testament, it was just the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, there were prophets who raised the dead. I don't know if you are aware of that, but that doesn't get talked about. There were Old Testament prophets that raised the dead. So they cured leprosy.
Okay, wait. Pause. Now, in order to do the research for this text, did you, because now I hear my the clergy in my life gonna say, Dorel, ask the question.
Okay.
How did you acquire the information to put it together and then do these summations and design it into not just the book, but the stage play? Was it self-study? Was it seminary work? Was it becoming like what? How?
So it was not seminary work. I can tell you that there was one particular book that sparked my interest. It was called Reading the Gospel Through Jewish Eyes. And it was written by a Christian theologian, but he was very much out there, I guess, on the left in terms of, liberation theology.
I'm going to look it up. Do you know the author?
Yes, his name is Bishop John Spong, S-P-O-N-G.
Okay, I'm going to look it up and I'll put it in the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, so he died a few years ago. But so that's what really sparked, even though I disagreed with many of his interpretations, what I couldn't disagree with is the fact that we do not look at the Gospels in the context of, hey, these were Jews, and so how did they view the world? And so when I started to do my own reading and research, and like I said, nothing I'm going to tell you. I mean, I can give you Bible verses. Okay, I can give you verses and tell you if these people raised the dead. I can give you the verses right now. But and when I put it in the screenplay, because I know it will strike people as being odd, I literally cite the chapter and verse.
Okay.
There is I think this is pretty amazing. In 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 20 to 21. Okay. 2 Kings. For those who are 2 Kings.
Okay, wait. I'm gonna turn my mic off so I can type it in. Say it again.
It's 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 20 to 21. Okay.
So 2 Kings 13, 20 to 21.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it. Go.
That's the one I find to be just. So you imagine you're Jewish. There's this guy saying, I'm the son of God and I'm doing all these wonderful things, including raising the dead. But in the back of your mind, you go to temple every Sabbath and you're reading the Torah and you're reading about other prophets who also have raised the dead. So the fact that Jesus raised the dead means what exactly? I mean, that doesn't really close the deal. You see, but this is something we don't talk about because we don't really look at the Old Testament as the context for the New Testament. So in the verse I just gave you, it was not just that someone raised the dead. It was Elijah, the prophet Elijah had already been dead. His bones were some ditch. Someone else had just recently died. A bunch of guys go to throw his body. They throw his body. And when this dead guy's body touched the bones of Elisha, he comes back to life. So, I mean, just touching the dead bones of a prophet, bring him back to life. Earlier in 2 Kings, there was prophet Elijah who, while alive, went and laid down on a boy who was dead. In the book of Acts, the apostle Paul raised somebody from the dead. You probably know about that story. So, but we don't worship the apostle Paul. Okay? And we definitely don't worship the prophets Elijah and Elisha. So when things like that start to happen, and we as Christians don't really have a context, then we have to ask ourselves, why would you not look at the context before you just go reading? So if the context is not Judaism, then what's the context? The context is that we've already made up our minds what we're going to believe because that's what we were told. And then we just go and we say, okay, I'll give you something else, which, by the way, this is an extra bonus because I did not cover this in the book.
Okay.
And there's a reason because, I don't want to, people are going to get very upset. But if you thought about for a minute, how does the Old Testament describe hell?
I can't tell you.
Because it doesn't.
Maybe that's why I couldn't tell you. Okay.
Hell
I don't remember.
It's not mentioned one time. Not one time. Because Jews don't believe in a place of eternal torment. They simply don't believe in it. So they have a word called Sheol, and it's not a fiery place. It's just a cold, deep pit. Separation from God. That's your punishment, to be separated from God, not to have the. So here's my question. So let's go back 2,000 years. Me and you, we're Jews. We're waiting on a Messiah, right? We do not believe in a place of eternal torment. We simply don't believe in it. Here comes a guy from amongst us, a Jew, saying, hey, I'm divine. I'm the son of God. Okay, look at all these miracles. Woo, 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 look at me. I can do all this. Follow me. Now, Doriel, the people who wanted to kill Jesus, they looked at everything they could, right? In other words, they criticized him for doing miracles on the Sabbath, right? They criticized him for not washing his hands before he ate.
Right.
They criticized him for talking to women.
Talking to women as well. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy couldn't do nothing. So question, if the Old Testament, which is Judaism, don't even have a word for hell, how did Jesus even communicate the concept to a Jewish audience? And there it is.
Okay. Oh, what? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You see, because
wait. So let me now, just for the record, did I go to seminary? No. I just like engaging in these conversations. So from my remembrance of sitting in a number of different houses of worship or listening to a lot of sermons, my perspective is that he poses the relationship with God as this is relationship that you want to have. And after you leave this earth, you want to be, it's sort of like focusing on the glass half full versus the glass half empty. You want to be in this relationship. You want to be with this community, let's say, focusing on that, so that that is the thing that you reach for, not focusing on the other side is where you don't want to be. Not to focus on or giving that a name, but this is where you want to be. And maybe this is conjecture. And, you know, don't get me in trouble. I still have to go to church next Sunday. How, if you're not going to go there, you don't know. If you are going to go there, then that's fine. But if you're not going to go there, let's not even talk about that, because that's not even a choice. So go ahead.
So, but the mainstream version of hell that we have definitely heard of is a place of eternal physical torment. And so the question is, what did really Jesus say about that? And I'm telling you that if you consider that such a place doesn't exist in the Old Testament at all, okay, and Jews still don't believe in that, by the way, then how can a Jewish man talking to a Jewish audience have said anything to them that they would have interpreted to be a place of eternal torment without having the Pharisees execute him on the spot? That would have been a clear departure from Jewish teaching. I mean, they were willing to kill him because he did miracles on the Sabbath and he didn't wash his hands. So how is it possible that he introduces a new concept to a religion and no one criticizes him in the least? In the least. Now, when I ask this of pastors, nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it.
So
because it doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting. So I'm why I'm looking down is because I try to cross-reference as we're having this conversation. And so I indeed just put in, does the Old Testament talk about hell? And it says hell is the place of weeping and gnashing of teeth, is not mentioned in the Old Testament. The term hell derives from Hades, a Greek term that appears only 10 times in the New Testament. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, the place of eternal torment that most mainstream Christians believe in is, quite frankly, something that Jesus never, if assuming that the Gospels are accurate, Jesus never, ever mentioned, ever. So, you know, most people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. But once I ask them very specific questions, you know what? They're like, well, gosh, yeah. And so now this starts to question a whole bunch of other things. But the other things I talk about that are much less controversial, that I think open people's minds up to thinking a little bit, is things like, for example, and it has to do with bigotry. There was a time when the disciples are going around and they were evangelizing, for lack of a better word. And they came to a city and everyone rejected them in the city and this particular town. And they were upset. They were talking to Jesus about it. They said, everybody rejected us. And then they pretty much asked Jesus, why don't we just go over there and kill everybody? I mean, let's just kill everyone.
What? Wait, what are you talking about?
Oh, yeah.
No. No. Now I need you to chapter verse. What are we talking about? What city?
Here's what I'll do. I don't know if I'm allowed to put anything in the chat.
Sure, you can.
What I will do, let me send a link, because this is one of the articles that I wrote called "Confronting Anti-Semitism: What Would Jesus Do?" And I'm going to put the link to this article in the chat, okay?
Yeah.
And it has, I'm going to put it up. And yeah, and so I can give you a chapter and verse because it's actually in.
Oh, wow. Yep. It's in the blogs, timesofisrael.com.
So it's got everything there, so you can look it up. But I'll give you the shorthand because I do cite chapter and verse in the article. So this is what happens. There are two things that happen. One, they go and they come back to Jesus and they say, "Hey, we saw some guy out there, and he was doing the miracles that we're doing, the miracle healings, but he wasn't part of us. He didn't get our permission, so we made him stop." And Jesus said, leave him alone. Whoever is not against us is for us. Okay. So that's number one, that you see the disciples pretty much claiming, hey, no one gets to teach, but if you're not part of our crew, you don't get to do things. All right. Jesus said, no, you don't do that. The second and more, I guess, stunning is when they come back and they say, look, everybody in this town rejected us. Here's what we ought to do. Let's go back and let us rain down fire from heaven on them. Just like the prophets of Baal. Remember that story? So that's killing people by burning them alive. Let's just be clear. So the disciples said, they don't want to believe. Let's go kill them all and let's burn them alive. And of course, Jesus says, no.
We're not doing that.
No, we're here to give life. We're not here to take life. So that's one of the stories I have in there about Jesus, for example, talking to Lazarus a lot. Much of the story is told through the eyes of Lazarus as a friend and confidant of Jesus. And when Jesus is, feeling upset about things, he can confide and talk to Lazarus. Hey, these guys, they're driving me crazy. And that's one of the things he talks about. He's like, you know what? I don't believe that they actually want to kill people because they don't want to accept what I'm saying. I don't know what these guys are thinking. And so to me, this really humanizes the story and the agony. The other thing, I'll give you another example. Satan comes to tempt Jesus. We all know the story. He tempts Jesus. Okay. Jesus says, get thee behind me. Okay. But one of the verses says, Satan departed to return to him at a more opportune time. But yet there is no other accounting in the Gospels of Satan ever returning. He comes that one time and he never comes back. So, but yet it says that when he left to return. So I said, you know what? Something's missing. He must have come back. I mean, so there are other times when I would create backstories where Satan returned. For example, when Jesus went to Nazareth and his own people rejected him. And they wanted to kill him by throwing him off a cliff.
Right.
And he escaped with his life. Well, right after that, I created a story where Satan comes back and says, see.
Okay. So
your own people want to throw you off a cliff. You're on the wrong team, my friend. You're on the wrong team.
Okay.
That's another example.
So I actually just pulled up. Okay, I just pulled up I typed this in. I said, where in the Bible can I find the next time the devil tested Jesus? So I'll just read the question. Thank you for those people who are here, who are watching. If you have any questions about this, please, if you have any things to say, any opinions, please drop them in the chat and I'll bring them up to provide more fodder to this conversation. So it says, Bible question, Luke chapter 4, after the devil had finished tempting Jesus, he left him until the next opportunity came. When was the next opportunity? Where in the Bible can I find it? And I'm actually looking at neverthirsty.org. It's a blog. Okay, so the Bible answer, Luke chapter 4, verse 13 records the last verse of the account that describes Satan's temptation of Jesus. Satan tempted Jesus 3 times, and each time Jesus refused to sin. Each time Jesus quoted scripture to Satan, not as a magic incantation, but as a reminder to Satan that his conduct was sin. When Satan was finished, we read that he left not forever, but to try again at a later time, an opportune time. The phrase opportune time is a good translation of the Greek text. There is nothing more to be learned from the Greek, but the message is simple. The devil left Jesus and planned to return sometime later. We can only assume that the devil returned when he thought that he might achieve some victory over Jesus. The scriptures never record another direct assault on Jesus Christ. That is, we cannot find the devil directly speaking to Jesus again. However, the Gospels do tell us that the devil attempted to undermine Jesus' plans by causing people to doubt what Jesus was speaking. That is, the devil attacked Jesus's words. The following 3 passages about the sower who sowed seed beside the road were taken from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Okay, and then it talks about those 3 spaces in Matthew 13:19, Mark 4:15, and Luke 8:12. Okay, so that's interesting. it's the first time that I heard that there was another opportune time that Satan had planned to sort of come back. But yes, there was never any more speaking about when that was. So thank you for that opportunity. Okay.
So that's an example of a gap in scripture. And that's an example of, a Jewish tradition called midrash. When there's a gap in scripture, you try to fill it. You just can't contradict what's already there. Okay. But and so we really don't have a Christian midrash. We don't have where we start thinking. So that's another. So I create other examples, like I said, when he his own people at Nazareth rejected him, created a story where the devil came again. And then, of course, closer around to the crucifixion, of course, I created another story where the devil came around then, because he knows he's going to be crucified, and the devil comes and says, hey, one more chance, it's your last chance, let's go. So I created some things that I think make it that humanize the story. For example, there's another aspect. I know that there are some preachers who talk about the fact that Jesus, came for the lost, came for the sinners, came for the poor, and also had an attitude that, while by our standards may not mean much, at the time was a pretty open and liberal standard in terms of women and having compassion on women for that time. I mean, to us, it's really nothing. But at that time, the segregation and repression of women was considered just a matter of routine and considered very normal. So when Jesus would even talk to the woman at the well, the fact that the women were the first people that, found him resurrected, these are things I've heard preachers talk about. What I don't hear them talking about was the issue of divorce, something that we totally miss when we look at the scriptures. Is if you look at it as a Jewish story, and you look at it as the fact that Jesus was challenging the Jewish leadership, and they wanted to find any reason to discredit him or kill him. They never came up to him and said, hey, Jesus, what did you have for breakfast this morning? None of their questions are questions of curiosity. Every question that a Pharisee asks him is a question about an area of Jewish life that is controversial. And we don't emphasize that point at all. No one comes up to him and says, hey, how'd you like that bagel and lox? No one's asking him about that.
Wait. So this is, I have to say, for the record, if you just popping in, this is Patrick Dankwa John. He's actually my former high school mate from Brooklyn, Erasmus Hall. And when he was at Erasmus, yes, he was a part of the debate team because Patrick liked to challenge everybody and also sort of make jokes, like literally make jokes about everything. And so even in this very serious conversation about Jesus being the Black Messiah and the midrash, I'm actually going to start probably using that phrase, filling in the gaps or doing, I don't want to get the word wrong, but exegeting the scriptures, and trying to do some interpretation for what is there, or things that may not be there, and trying to make it make sense, right? That's a good phrase. Let's make it make sense. That there is still some of your jocularity that is evident in this work. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, when you said that you wrote this book for Christians to understand the Jewish part of who Jesus is and was and is, but then it also seems like you wrote it for Jews to understand the humanistic and cultural aspects of the Black part of who we would perceive Jesus to have been.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a Jewish person tell me that, and I wasn't thinking about a Jewish audience at all when I wrote. Not at all, not in the slightest. Not at all.
Well, if you're gonna give the woman's name Shaniqua, like when you said that, Patrick, I'm telling you, I thought you were joking. You're like, no, I really didn't.
No, I really am. I really am. So you have to make things relatable to people. And so I made it relatable. And so we don't talk about the fact, we talk about, oh, Jesus died. No, he didn't die. He was killed. And we don't talk about a whole lot about who wanted him dead and why. We talk about the fact that he died and that he rose, okay? But we don't really talk about, okay, who wanted this guy that didn't hurt nobody? Who hated him so much that they wanted him to die a torturous death? And why would they want him dead? So to me, it's kind of like we're missing the whole story. A big part of the story is like, okay, he didn't die in a car accident. So somebody wanted this guy dead bad. Now, who was he ticking off? So we just talk, it's like a passive, it's like, wait a minute, Dr. King didn't just die. Malcolm X didn't just die. Gandhi didn't just die. Lincoln didn't just die. I mean, there are people that hated them for their positions and killed them. And we don't talk about that. So why is this guy that we call the Prince of Peace and all that, who wanted him dead so bad? Who was he offending? And so one of the things that I put in the book is, look, he clearly was challenging the power of the religious leadership. That's clear. But also, I found his position on divorce at the time, taken in context, to be something that would have made the Jewish leadership, who are all men, furious. It would have made them furious, but we just kind of overlook it. At the time, back then, this is how Jews would get divorced. The husband could say to the wife 4 times, I divorced you, didn't need a reason. And she's out, no alimony, no child support, no kids, he can take everything, and she has to go back to her family or she's begging in the streets, okay? That was Jewish divorce. By the way, there's a small sect of very, very conservative Jews today for which this is still the case. In other words, women are not allowed to get a divorce. You can't even get one. It has to be the man. So also you got to remember back then, guys were having multiple wives. Right? David had multiple wives and concubines, so did Solomon. So you're in a context where men were allowed to have wives, concubines, and women literally could not get divorced. It had to be the husband making that choice. And they had all the money and all the power. So you get to something where Jesus says, they come to him and say, hey, is it okay if we divorce our wives? There is no question that gets asked by Jesus, by one of his haters, that is not touching a Jewish controversy. And we totally miss that. So every question that he gets asked is being asked to set him up, to discredit him, to make him take a position publicly that's going to cause him to lose credibility and followers. So when he gets asked that question, it's like, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on with the women. I can presume not everybody likes it, especially if one of your family members, like somebody divorced them, and then you got to take them back and you don't have no money. So when Jesus gives his answer, I create the story that, you've got Caiaphas who says, listen, guys, go out there and get this guy to say something. All right? Just ask him some tough questions. And then when he says something stupid enough, we can round him up.
Got him.
And so they keep going back. So all these back and forth that you see in the Gospels all the time, where they're asking Jesus all these questions, should we pay taxes or not? I've got stories where they're going back to Caiaphas. Caiaphas is like, ask him about taxes. And then he goes to ask about taxes, and the crowd is still loving him. And they come back, and Caiaphas says, so what happened? Did you ask about taxes?
Right.
Yeah, but that didn't go too well. And Caiaphas is like, what's wrong with you guys? Get back out there. Ask him about divorce. And they go, get back out. Ask him, why is he doing all these miracles on the Sabbath? Ask him that. And so one of the questions was divorce. And when he comes back and he says, well, what do you say about divorce? And then they report that. Caiaphas and all the guys get very, very angry. And I have a scene where they're saying, wait a minute, that's how I keep my wife in check. Because she knows that she can go at any time. That's how I keep her in line. Now, this dude over here, who, by the way, don't have no wife himself, so he can talk, because that's all he doing. He got rules for us. But he ain't living by them rules because he don't got no wife and he ain't got no kids. But he's stirring up stuff for us. Mr. Feminist. Aren't you the feminist?
It is amazing that you've kept this level of like jousting throughout all these years, and with such a very serious and tenuous topic of Jesus, the miracles, his stories, and the stories that we know, the stories that we were raised on. And yeah, there are some little gaps that people will use poetic license in order to make sense of, and you're attempting to do this in this book. Now, you said that you also turned this into a screenplay.
Well, what I did was I wrote it as a screenplay, and I said, you know what? And then I got an idea. I said, you know what? I could take this. That's how I intended it to be, and that's how I wrote it. I said, you know what? I can reduce it in book form, and so I thought about it as a movie. That's how I thought about it. That's how I conceptualized it. And then when I was done with it, and I copyrighted it, and no one in Hollywood comes knocking. So hey, if they come knocking, I'd be glad. But I said, okay. Well, I said, but you know what? And then I got the idea. Hey, you know what? I guess there's nothing wrong with reducing it to a book. Really, there's nothing wrong with that. And just putting it on Kindle, on Amazon, which is what I've done. So it's reduced to a book, but it was intended to be, for the silver screen. So I think it reads pretty fast. It turned out to be funnier than I had anticipated, because I was not trying to be funny. I was just trying to be realistic, and to say, put people in this position, and what do you think they're going to do? I mean, like, for example, the wine, the miracle, the first, okay, this is, Jesus turns the water into, okay, this is usually always considered the first miracle of the Bible.
Right.
So I had a question. So here's the Son of God. Mary knows this, right? Up until this point, he's 30 years old. He has not done any miracles. And I'm like, why would she press him? Because he only did it because his mother pressed him, right? Mary pressed him, right? And he was like, woman, why? My time has not yet come. And she was like, she basically snagged him to it. So why, of all the things in all these years, why would she press him about wine at a wedding? Like, what's the big deal? I thought there's got to be some reason. And so I thought, okay, I really think that he and Joseph didn't get along. I really think that Joseph was just too through with him. So I think, you know what? Because the Bible did say that they were at a relative's wedding. So even though Joseph wasn't written in the story, I'm assuming he was there. To be no reason for him not to be there, right? So what I do is he goes through, and I have the story where he turns the water into wine. And I have the reason wrapped up in the story is that Joseph was at the wedding, and Mary thought that if Joseph saw Jesus do this, and everybody was going to be oohed and ahed, that this would impress him, and that he would actually warm up to Jesus.
Okay, pause right there. Another pausing stop. So again, I'm very thankful that there are some people who are watching, even if we've crossed like our hour time, and we can, I'm sure, still go strong for a little bit. I am really now rethinking when I listen to sermons and how I listen to, as you say, the midrash, and how people attempt to make the story relatable, and to take the God bless the memory of Sister Barbara. No, not Barbara. Sister Vaughn. She was one of my Sunday school teachers, and how she would say, if there's any other version of the Bible that is read other than King James, that is not the Bible. But to take the these and the thous and the whithersoevers and what have you, and try to make it make sense, to make it relatable to people. And you have humanized, definitely, like other preachers that I know who are very colorful, in their work. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, literally and figuratively, meaning looking at the text in written form, seeing it prayerfully on a stage, on a screen. Of course, I'd love to know like who are going to be like the main characters and who would you love to get to play these
Oh, I want Terrence Howard. I want him to be Satan. I want Delano Lindsay to be Caiaphas. I want I had ideas in my head of who would play different roles. I hope
Thank you,
John
Dr.
Amos is
Clifton.
still alive. He needs to play Joseph.
Oh, that would be good.
That
would be good.
Because he needs to play somebody who comes in and he's like, oh, you pregnant. How did that happen?
Gosh. Patrick, this is very good. This is very good. I really think that, so if for nothing else, can I say that for nothing else, and thank you to the ministers in my lives who are paying attention and who dropped a very great point. Critical thinking is very important. We can question, interrogate the text. Thank you so much, Dr. Clifton. Again, if for nothing else, there are probably people who will be able to watch this on the replay and sort of take the colorful aspects of your filling in the midrash and coming up with some additional relatable, moments. For example, like, when there are ministers who speak of the turning the water into wine. And I've heard a number of preachers say, well, he's probably a brother, because got to have wine. And in my head, I'm thinking, isn't this supposed to be holy? Isn't it supposed to be like sacrosanct? Isn't it supposed to be like, why are we talking about like getting down at the party? But maybe the different communities that people are addressing from their pulpit, you got to make it make sense. So I'm just saying, Patrick, I really, really hope that this can that some people will take this another look at this and give it an opportunity to be on a stage somewhere. So John Amos as that would be really cool as Joseph. So I've never really thought of. Thank you so much. Right. So let me put this up. There we go. Sanctified imagination is necessary for the preaching moment. Listen, Dr. Angelita, I agree, because some of that stuff that we read, I'm like, I don't get that. I don't understand. But then again, there are very poetic people who figure it out. So Patrick, as you are doing this work, or I'm so impressed. But I usually say I roll with the best. I do my best. I'm very impressed that, number one, first of all, we were literally the elect of our class. Shout out to all of my Erasmians from Erasmus Hall, but the 99 official, we are something else. We are something else. That, yes, you spend time in the military, you went to law school, you're serving, you're practicing law in Chi-Town, right? But you are the first Black person to be the president of the Jewish bar. That's just still, it's so incredible to me. You've written these articles on anti-Semitism. You've written articles on racism and discrimination. And then you've come to sort of take a step on the Christian side, because you are a Christian, but you're bridging a gap, right? You're bridging a gap. You're taking the stories that billions of people, and I'll say it lovingly like that, have been raised on, cut their teeth on, will, swear their life on. And you said, let me break it down to you. Because some people who won't step into a house of worship because there are all of these rules, but listening to this story, they'll say, you got a Shaquita in this story. We got a No, come on. Now, even though that may sound a little Tyler Perry-esque, but it gives some light and laughter to a message that will still ring true, that we still hold on to. But it makes it contemporary enough for us to digest, and for us to marinate, and for us to think about, hey, I never thought about that. Like sort of the butting of heads of Joseph, the father, the Bible. Well, the Father and Jesus. Yes, thank you so much. Contextualization. Thank you so much, Dr. Angelita. Contextualization, putting the context, making the context like almost the glue, right, to the pieces of the puzzle to kind of hold them together. And so what are your next steps with this?
Well, of course, I sent, when I first wrote it, and once I copyrighted it and I got the copyright back, I said, okay, now I'm going, send it to everybody. So, I have no Hollywood connections, so no one's interested. But I was feeling very discouraged. But then I remember hearing about something. Do you remember this? The movie called Harriet Tubman, the movie came out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So the guy who wrote that movie, I forgot his name. He's a black guy. It was made a movie 20 years after he wrote the screenplay. And I remember reading an article about how he wrote it and he was very excited. And he couldn't find, you have to find somebody who to put the money into it cost money to make a movie. And he talked about how he had shopped it around to all the Hollywood studios, and it took 20 years by the time. So we watched a movie that was written 20 years prior. And so when I read that story about him, I said, I have to take the position that, hey, it's written, the hard work is done. And if people are not interested, at least for now, I just have to be patient. So I put it on Amazon, hoping that people will read it. And that's like I said, when I say things that I know are going to shock people, I actually cite the verse in there, about different things that I know people are going to be they're going to feel a little funny about it. But I'm like, no, it's right there. Maybe you've never heard of it, but it's there.
Or it could just be, so the person who wrote the movie or the screenplay for Harriet is Gregory Allen Howard.
Okay. Yeah. So it took 20 years. Yeah,
wow. I didn't know that it took 20 years. That's incredible.
So I'm like, you know what? It's written. It's out there. If you start getting too deep, you lose people. And so in the book, like I don't talk about hell in the book. I mean, people would burn it right away because they'd say you're a heretic, you're questioning orthodox. I'm like, oh, let's stay away from that. So I have got to be, everything that I say, nothing contradicts anything that anybody is. So that's what I mean when I say, no one disagrees with anything really, but they're just not comfortable. It's like, I'm not saying anything that didn't really happen, but you say, okay, when I start asking you questions, like, for example, there's this one scene, I have to thank my wife for this, when Jesus was saying at the party with the wine, after Jesus turned water into wine, well, as we know, Joseph doesn't appear anywhere. And so I had to make it, well, okay, so he tried the wine trick and that didn't work. And then he has this conversation with Mary because they're not feeling good about it. And Joseph is like, oh, great, you're the son of God, and now you're the holy bartender. I mean, you have a chance to do something good, and what you do is you bring wine. This is it? This is what you do? Dummy. And so,
I'm sorry.
And so Joseph still is not. Joseph like, whatever. This is what you're going to do? Wine? What you're going to do? Now you want to just look down at the carpentry shop. We got all this stuff. Why don't you do a miracle, okay, and make some cabinets? What about that? Miracle worker, make some cabinets.
So wait, so we have a prophecy. We are looking forward to the film release in 2042. Patrick, we got to stay strong, okay? We got to stay strong. We'll be in our 70s.
Now, but there's a serious scene that I have to really give public credit to my wife because she gave me this brilliant idea.
Okay, what is it?
And it was, as I'm thinking about, so and I had this wine scene, and he made the water into wine, and he thought that he wants his father's approval.
Yeah.
And he can never get it because he's pretty much like a stepchild. Joseph is like, look, I stayed here because the God told me to stay here because you're supposed to be the Messiah, but I'm not seeing no evidence of this, okay?
Oh, that old priest. That's right. He didn't see anything from his son for 30 years.
People totally forget this I'm talking about. So we're not trained to think. So think about this story. You got a kid. You got a carpentry shop. People are saying you stupid for staying with a woman who slept around you behind your back. You talking about he's the son of God. He gonna save the world. He gonna do this. He gonna do that. All this time he ain't doing nothing. Nothing. He can't even make some cabinets good. You know, and people are like, this is it. You stayed with this so-and-so mother for this.
Okay.
So he's taking all kind of flack. So watch this. So I'm like, okay. So now this guy's, he's 30. So he turns the water into wine. He's hoping for Jesus wants some affirmation. He doesn't get it. Joseph is just, so
like, and what?
so now Jesus is very dejected at the wedding. He's upset. He's like talking to Mary. He's like, Mom, I don't understand this. What does he want from me? And, and she's trying to calm him down and soothe him and say, he's a good man, Jesus. But, you got to look at it from his perspective. Okay. I mean, this is a lot to take, And so she's trying to tell him, look, he's a good man. And then she tells him a story. And I have to give credit to my wife publicly for this, because this is a very graphic story. And the story is, she said, Jesus, your father, Joseph, is a good man. Let me tell you something. You probably don't really understand. But when I got pregnant, it's not just that he could have chosen to divorce me. It's that if he went public, I would have been stoned to death.
Yeah, right. And he then had to protect me.
There's a graphic scene in there where, and I have to give credit to my wife, I'm thinking when people get stoned, you just tie them up and, everybody gets a stone. So my wife informed me that that's not the only way you get stoned. There are parts of the Middle East where you get stoned is they dig a hole and they put you about chest deep into the hole. And then so your arms are like this and you're in chest deep, and then they put the dirt back in. So from the chest, so basically you're close to the ground from the chest up to your head.
Yes.
And your arms are all in dirt. And they stone you in that position. Okay.
Ooh.
And so I have this scene where she says to him, listen, I had this dream when the angel first came and said, you're going to be bearing, and then, when Joseph was so upset, she said, I went to, and I had this dream, and the dream was, oh my gosh, if this guy doesn't accept this, what's going to happen to me? And I had this dream where I was rounded up and stoned. And so it's a graphic scene where she's put like this, and she's still in a dream, and she's afraid for her life. And, she wakes up the next day, and Joseph says, you know what? We're good. We're good. We're good.
Wow.
I'm not gonna, we're good.
So go ahead.
So she says, Jesus, I know he's not the guy you want him to be, but he did more than most guys. Most guys were not going to accept this. I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here. Most guys would have simply put me out. They didn't want to hear nothing from nobody. So you need to just, understand a little bit, Jesus. Now that to me is a real conversation.
It is.
All this whole, don't nobody live their life like that. In other words, is a church service. Okay.
And some people look for a church service, and what they really need is, look, this is how it happened. This is how it went down. This is the contextualization, as Dr. Angelier said.
All that holiness is only 2 hours a week, but the rest of the time you're a real person.
And we still got the light bill. We still got,
you get upset. You have fears. You have, so that's an example of a story that I put in there, because I'm like, hey, Jesus just had this longing for earthly fatherly approval that he never got. And this also explains why Joseph is completely absent when Jesus is suffering. I mean, there are times when people heard that he was out doing miracles, and remember his mother and his siblings, which we rarely talk about the fact that Jesus had siblings.
Right. That's a whole other conversation. But
but the siblings went with the mom looking for him, and remember he was at a house, and they said, Jesus, your mother and your brothers and sisters are here. Your family's here. And Jesus said, well, who's my family? My family is right here. Whoever's listening to me. Remember that?
Yeah.
But the book says,
that's interesting. There was no mention of Joseph.
That's right. There we go. We just miss all this. We just miss it.
Where was Joseph, y'all? Listen, I know there's still some ministers who are listening and watching. Where was Joseph? What do we say about him? You know what? I never thought about that until just now.
And that's the whole point, that we do not study the Bible. We skim the Bible.
Interesting.
Okay, to study means to consider thoughtfully and reflectively. So how is this guy who accepted this, miracle? You don't see him no place. One time at the temple when Jesus was 12. Other than that, so they're going. He lets the women and the brothers and sisters go look for Jesus because they think Jesus is crazy, and he's nowhere to be found. There's no word of him. So I'm like, he was still pissed. He was like, hey, you all want to go find? You know what? Fine. Fine. And when you come back, bring me some ribs.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean, because it's like, this is, but this is real. But we have this, that's 2 hours a week. Nobody lives like that. So it explains that. The other thing, in all seriousness, that we don't think about when we think about the anti-Semitism of it is
yeah, you need another light. There we go.
Ooh, that's my little too
that
bright.
was too bright.
Is
wait.
Do you know?
Hold on. You may have to. Do you have a dimmer on your computer?
Does that work for you though?
Kind of works for me.
Is that better?
Well, we'll work it. It's fine.
Yeah.
This is good conversation. But just sit back because the top of your head is cut off.
Okay, so I don't want to mess up your. Yeah, so one of the things, as we talk about, in all seriousness, about why Jews do not believe that Jesus is the Messiah, is because we don't talk about this. And this is because I do talk about this in the screenplay. As Lazarus is narrating this story of his time with Jesus to his 10-year-old son, who doesn't understand. Lazarus is on the run. The family's on the run. People want to kill them. You don't understand why. And Lazarus is explaining all this story to his son. And the son's like, well, he did all this great stuff. Why wouldn't you believe he's the Messiah? I don't understand. And Lazarus is saying, well, you know what? We had other prophets that did wonderful things. And we expected the Messiah to literally be like a general in an army and to physically save us from the Romans and any other oppressor. That's what we were looking for. We weren't looking for nobody to tell us about going to heaven. I mean, we already had a system for heaven. We didn't need somebody coming with that. So we thought somebody was going to be like King David or King Solomon,
Wow.
Physically. And this is the Jewish belief, by the way. And we don't talk about that. But so how could you, there's a saying, if you don't know your opponent's argument, then you really don't know your own, right? Because if you don't know your rival's argument, you really don't know your own, because so many weaknesses.
So, and the first thing I think of when I hear that is, to know your offense, you need to know the defense, or vice versa. Is that a similar parallel?
You pretty much need to know what are your weaknesses.
Okay.
What are the weaknesses in your argument? And if you don't know the arguments of people who disagree with you, then you really don't know your argument. I mean, you've just accepted whatever somebody told you because you ain't even thought about it to even ask. And so Jews believe he's not the Messiah because, number one, he didn't do what the Messiah was supposed to do. From their perspective, the Messiah is a worldly, person that's going to, not divine, anything like that. So they're like, look, if the world is still in a heck of a mess, and it is, by definition, the Messiah has not arrived. That's the long and short of it.
Okay.
They're like, the Messiah is here. He's going to kick some butt, and there's going to be peace on earth and goodwill toward men. If that hasn't happened, then the Messiah ain't here. They're like, that's it. Do you know what I mean? Now they got all kind of other sophisticated, but the sum of it is, if he doesn't bring that to the world, then he was a nice guy, but he wasn't the Messiah. He's a prophet, maybe, but he wasn't the Messiah. That's in essence. So as I have Lazarus reciting the story to his son, and the son's like, why didn't you believe him? So really what we're saying to Jewish people without realizing it is we're telling Jewish people, you all have interpreted your own scriptures incorrectly. That's really what we're telling them, right? Because we look at the Old Testament and look at whether it's Isaiah or whatever in terms of prophesying the Messiah coming. And we interpret that Messiah and what he would do very differently from how Jews interpret that, which that's our right to do that. I'm just saying we should at least know what our argument is and what other people's argument is. So when the way I tell the story, when Lazarus is, by the way, on the run for his life, because after, we don't talk about this a lot, but after Jesus resurrected Lazarus and Jesus were both wanted men. The Pharisees were looking to kill both of them, not just Jesus. And we don't talk about that because they felt that the existence of Lazarus was a problem in terms of credibility for them. So they were like, look, we want you to kill both of these guys. Go get them, whatever it takes. And so Lazarus was like, So Jesus was like, look, here's some cash. Okay, I'm going to give you a little something. You take Shaniqua and Ray, and you all need to get out of here.
Lord.
And of course, he didn't want to do that. She's like, look, I got to do this. I got to do this, but you got to go. And it's not going to help anything for us both to die. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he took his wife and he fled. And, and what happened? Of course, Jesus, was crucified and resurrected. And so Lazarus was in hiding because they were looking to kill him. And so then, they didn't have no TV and stuff back then. So it takes a long time for word to get around. So he's hiding out at this inn and he's hiding out there. And then, and they're like, hey, listen, you can't let nobody know we're Jewish. Okay. Just no one can know we're Jewish. Just pretend to be something else. So, and they're eating and drinking at the inn and they're just trying to figure out how, they're going to wait. Then they're going to take a ship and go someplace else, anything. So, imagine they're frantic. And so Jesus gets crucified and then he gets resurrected. And, and then, word slowly starts to spread. And then, Lazarus is like, okay, I don't know. Is it safe to go back home? I don't know, really. This is, let's just stay right here, for a little bit, And so it's in this context of while he's in hiding, because the story opens up with Lazarus and his family in hiding. That's how it opens. Mm-hmm. And so, and Shanique was like, I told you that boy wasn't nothing but trouble.
Listen, let me.
Day one. And that's what you was going to quit your job for, right? You was going to quit your job and leave me with the bills, okay? For a dude that's dead. And now we running because you was with him. Well, thank you, Lazarus, okay? And so that's how it kind of opens up. And he's like, oh, my God, I don't believe this is, oh, my God, now me, my wife, and my kids, we're going to die. Oh, my God, what are we going to do? And so the son is like, what is going on? And he's telling all this to his son. So in the end, of course, it's a very traditional Christian story in the sense that, Jesus is the Messiah. He gets crucified, but he does come back, and he comes back. And I have a little bit of when he comes back. And he comes back and he does, meet Lazarus, type, very brief reunion with Lazarus, and everybody's crying and hugging and, glad to see each other and all of that. And and he goes and sees the disciples a little bit. So when he returns, it's not, a whole lot about him returning in there, just a little bit. He does go when Joseph finally accepts him. Joseph.
Okay, so he finally welcomes his son and says.
So after he, Mary's crying her poor eyes out, and you weren't there for our son, and what kind of father are you, and and then he's like, hey, well, if he's the Messiah, where is he? Where is he? Okay, so when Jesus comes back, he does visit his parents, including Joseph, and it's a brief. In the way that's in the book, it's brief, but Joseph, of course, tearfully accepts him and apologizes and accepts that he was the Messiah all along. And so he got that earthly fatherly approval that he had longed for.
So, okay. So, and let me just say for the record, again, thank you for those people who are still on. Some people have sort of shifted in and shifted out and then come back. I'm sort of watching the feed. And this is Patrick Dankwa John, who is my high school classmate. And so realistically, the last time we saw one another was like 35.
Oh, it's got to be, yeah, it's over 30 years ago.
Something like that. 35 years ago. But we literally have not changed, a little silver, a little less hair. But yeah. So, and he's written a book called The Black Jewish Messiah, which he has. So to lean over so people can kind of see that. Where's the book? Where's the book?
It's in Kindle.
Oh, okay. So, well, that's it right there. There we go. That's it. Jesus, the Black Jewish Messiah. And he's a very, very, thank you very much. We got it. We got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it. We got it. So very, very articulate conversation. Thank you so much. Actually, so we have some family from Ghana who's watching. Thank you so much, Brother Steve. I see you. Thank you so much. And has written this book, and he's also an accomplished attorney of family law in Chicago, Illinois, Chi-Town, raise up. And but Brooklyn, I will say Brooklyn bred, not born, but Brooklyn bred, right in the heart of Flatbush.
That's fair to say.
That's right. And thank you, Mama, for being here. One of my biggest fans. And so I just wanted to say this has been such a fruitful conversation. I did not expect anything but laughs. And of course, it's very serious. And we did some biblical study, right? We took a look at some scriptures to sort of prove some points of how there is, I'm going to really use this word, midrash, right? Some gaps in scripture. And the way that it appears that you have filled in the gaps with relevant and relatable, contextualized life experiences. Ooh, someone write that down. That is part of your review. It appears to make it digestible for Christians, and I'll say as a Black Christian, for Black Christians, because if you're telling me the story here, how you wrote the screenplay, then I'm sure I would be sitting. And for those of you who understand, like, I'll say Black theater, not on Broadway, the early 80s of when we were seeing the early, like, Tyler Perry type work that was like on, I'll say regular stages, not the Broadway stuff. It appears that it has a little bit of that essence. It also appears that it has almost like an essence of Jesus Christ Superstar. Did you ever see Jesus Christ Superstar?
Yeah, but boy, yes, but boy, I don't even have a memory of it. That's how long we're
Don't worry about it. But as you were telling this story or giving us like these snippets, I was literally like, that sounds like something that I would have heard or seen in Jesus Christ Superstar, which is fine. Because of course there's comedy, but there's also like the things that you don't think about, or the things that may have been like in the back of your mind and you're like, nah, that can't be, or that wouldn't have happened, or what if this actually happened in contemporary times. So I really appreciate it. Tell us one more time how we can get a hold of
listen, you go on Amazon.com and if you type in my name, Patrick Dankwa John, there's only one of me in the world. So if you type that name just like that, you're going to get the book. And I want to say something else. This is not a plug for anything. One of the types of things I do with my articles, I told you I write about anti-Semitism, but also write about racism. And so one of the things that I've done through an article, and I can put it in here if you want, but there's another article I wrote when George Floyd incident happened.
Okay.
And everybody was talking about it. That's not news to Black people, right? We've been suffering this. So what I did was I created a word, and the word is crupelicum, and it's a 3-syllable word. Cru as in crucifix, meaning to torture. Pelle, Italian for skin, and chrome, Greek for color. So it's got the roots of torture, skin, and color.
Wait, you created a word?
I just created it. Now, please tell, the people who write the dictionary, they need to include it because they don't want to listen to me. So I did say, we literally need a word because we don't have a word. When we talk about bigotry or slavery or oppression or discrimination, these are words that, every group has suffered in one form or another. But we don't even have a language that uniquely describes Black suffering. There is no word that simply means to discriminate and persecute and torture someone simply because of the color of their skin. So even though we have been suffering this for over 400 years, we have no word for it. And so every time we talk about it, we always have to take words from other people's experiences and then explain why ours is so different. So somebody says, well, you're not the only people that were enslaved. Everybody else was slave. Everybody was a slave at some point. Yes, but our slavery was different. And then you got to point out the ways in which chattel slavery was different from other forms of slavery. You people, yeah, you were discriminated against, but so were the Irish, and so were the Italians, and so were the Mexicans, and so, on and on. Yes, but their discrimination was different from ours. And we keep going through this. And I said, you know what? We keep taking our other people's experiences and the words used to describe them, and then we have to keep explaining everything all the time. So why don't we simply have a word or phrase that captures our unique experience that no one else really can claim, and then go from there? And so that's when I decided, you know what, I'll come up with a word. I literally just came up with a word. And now when George Floyd happened, I said, well, this is as good a time. This is as good a time as any, because at that point, the whole nation was gripped because everybody saw the video of what happened. So it was, people were, I guess, interested in that topic. So anyway, so I did that. I'm gonna put it in the chat for people who are interested. But anyway,
yeah, I'm actually, so crew, say it again.
It's called Crew Pelican. What I'm going to do is, here, I found it, and I am going to, and there goes the Times of Israel. That's my article, the link to my article about that. It's, it's called Enough, I Can't Breathe. It's because George Floyd was going on at that time. In that article, I just say, we need to come up with a new word. And so I said, let me come up with this word. And I tried to justify the need for the word, because language is the vehicle of culture, and if we don't even have a word after over 400 years, we don't even have a word that is unique, even though our experiences have been unique in ways that no other minority group can claim. Even though that's the case, we don't have our own words to describe that experience. So that we're not talking about what happened to the Irish or the Italians or the Jews or anyone else. And even when I'm in, I was talking to a group of a mixed Jewish Christians group a couple months ago, and I said, the Jews were enslaved, but Pharaoh did not enslave you because of your color of your skin. Right? The Bible says he enslaved you because he was afraid that you would join with the other enemies of Egypt in war. That's it. There was no, Jews are inherently inferior people. That wasn't it. So everyone's been enslaved at some point in history. We're the only people to have been enslaved, supposedly because our physical appearance makes us inherently inferior human beings. No other group of people in the world can lay claim to that. So because of that, even when we're free, we got to deal with this white supremacy. So anyway, I thought I would share that with you because that's part of my work.
Excellent. Just to spell it one more time. CRU.
CRUPELLECHROM.
Oh, got it. Here we go. Thank you, Brother Steve. So Brother Steve from Ghana said, should we put the word in the chat? And I'll print it up here. Crew Pelicrum. Wow. Okay, folks. Now I'm going to need y'all to share this word out. Crew Pelicrum. And so we need to, I know I've had some of my folks from the African History Network, Brother Michael Imhotep, probably some other people from the Hoppy Network, including Professor James Small, which I'll definitely send this to him and say, this is one of your students and he's taking your work and like moving it forward. We are part of the next generation of Black think tankers, people who are keeping the culture and respecting the history and protecting the history. That's Brother Michael Imhotep's word from the African History Network. So I thank you. I thank you once again. We have literally been going strong for almost 2 hours. This is fantastic.
Okay, so I don't want to wear you out.
No. Listen, I mean, listen, it's all good. It is all good. It's all good. I'm very proud. Of course, Erasmus Hall, deep and strong, right? Day O, we are dusting until we die. And so thank you for representing Flatbush. Thank you for representing Brooklyn. Thank you for representing Christians, Black Christians, and also people of the Jewish faith. I'm so glad that you showed up and then you crossed the aisles. You walked into rooms that people were like, you sure you were in the right room?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said, I'm not only in the right room, but watch this. I'm a legion a little bit. That is amazing. I love you dearly. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
When it gets to the stage, just type my name into the Google search. Come find me. I will come. I will sit in the front row. I want to be one of the first people when the curtains go back. Most definitely.
I will let you know. As soon as somebody wants to put it on the screen or on the stage, I will let you know.
We're going to be here for it. We're going to be here for it. All right, folks. So peace and blessings. This is a Learn to Grow You moment where I plant seeds to help you grow. This has been Patrick Dankwa John, my high school classmate from, I even have the art. This is our yearbook with his picture and our picture is in. You were supposed to be class clown. They really should have given it to you because you still have that clown effect. For the record, I was Miss Erasmus. I was the most popular female in the school. Anyway, so, and that was 2,000 students. 2,000 students. So I love you dearly. I will see you all on the next episode, which will probably be next week. I don't think I have anything else, but who knows? If you keep your notifications set on YouTube and on Facebook, you never know, because I popped up earlier today and that was a little unexpected. So if you have any other recommendations for people that you think we should engage in critical conversations with, please just slide into a DM somewhere, somehow. Come find me and let me know who that person is. I'm very, very thankful for those people who are suggesting other folks now, and not just here in the States, but across the world. We are trying to get this word out to engage, and empower through critical conversations, things that can be sort of set around the water cooler, but people then don't do anything else about it. And that's what we need to do, keep these very fruitful messages and thoughts and writhings of soul and spirit and mind and move the agenda forward for not just people locally, but globally as well. I'll see you all the next time. This is Dory Linez-Laurier of Learn to Grow You, where I plant seeds to help all of us grow.